Hi everyone, this is just going to be a quick little, hopefully 5 to 10 minute video to give you some idea of what I expect you to be doing for the My Diet Analysis project. If you haven't seen the instructions, please make sure you go into Blackboard. Oh, sorry, I meant to be sharing my screen. Okay, so if you haven't already, please make sure you go into Blackboard, click on the My Diet Analysis project folder, and then click on the instructions, which also includes a grading rubric. So this is a pretty long document. It's 7 pages. Hopefully that doesn't feel too overwhelming. I mean, the first page is really just explaining why I ask you to do this project. It is a fairly detailed project. Obviously, there's 2 parts to it. It's kind of a semester-long project, but it really is an opportunity for you to take what you're learning in our class and then apply it really to yourself in terms of doing your own nutrition assessment and your own nutrition analysis, and then making your own really basic, simple recommendations to yourself for how you might either improve or at the very least just maintain your overall nutrition-related health. So what I ask you to do is create an account with MyFitnessPal. If you're having any difficulty doing that, please send me an email and we can figure out a little workaround. Then I ask you to track 5 days. What did I say? So for 5 days, record all the foods and beverages that you consume. So, any sodas, any, coffee with sweetener in it, tea with honey, and then any of the foods that you eat, meals, snacks, desserts, etc. Put that in MyFitnessPal. Then, once you've entered your food into MyFitnessPal, for part 1, what I want you to do is run this weekly digest report, and then print the report, save it to your computer or your iPad. I say not to do this step on a phone or a tablet, and that's mostly just because that might complicate the download process. But if you can do it, if you can download this report to your phone or to an iPad, go ahead. That's not a problem. I'm just thinking, maybe it's my old age, but I'm just thinking it'll be a little more straightforward if you do that from a desktop or a laptop. So save that to your computer, and then you're going to upload this report with your written summary, which is step 3, in order to submit your complete part 1 of this project. Step 3, I'm not going to go through these directions. They're pretty straightforward. This is just writing your written summary. So this is basically where you write your analysis of what you've found from your nutrition assessment, which is just a 1-part assessment. You're just using your food diary as the only component of the assessment. So obviously it's a limited assessment, but this is just kind of for practice purposes. So I ask you to compare how your macronutrient intake compares to the recommended. And I want you to refer to both the AMDR and the RDA for all 3 macronutrients. Discuss your fruit and veggie intake compared to the DGA recommendations. Make a couple statements about what this analysis suggests about your current nutritional health, and then write 3 recommendations for yourself. Again, either ways you can improve your nutritional health, or if you're in great nutritional health, if you're meeting all the recommendations, then just what are maybe the top 3 things that you could do to sustain, maintain, continue in good nutritional health. Lastly, you'll see there's step 5 here. Since this is a science class, I do want you to include at least 1 scientific reference, and to cite it using the correct APA style citation. So I give you a link here. If you're not familiar with accessing links in Microsoft Word, in the bottom left of your keyboard should be an option to click the control button. Usually it's abbreviated CTRL. If you click control, then usually a little, well, it depends on how your computer is set up, but this little mouse hand might appear, and then you can actually click the link. Right, it should open up for you. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is in MyFitnessPal, First, I'll just show you adding foods really quickly. So in the instructions, I think I say be specific and precise, right? So if you make a stir fry or if you have oatmeal, that's the example I'm going to give. Rather than just selecting oatmeal, I'd like you to actually put in each ingredient. So here, I already entered it, right? So, and this is a nice thing about MyFitnessPal is once you've entered it once, it should sort of save so that you can access it again, or recent things that you've input. So if you have the same breakfast every day, that's easy. So let's see, 1 package of regular oatmeal, a half cup of sweet cherries, and 1 medium apple. So I'm going to add all of those. And let's see, I'm also going to add a banana. Yeah, maybe 1 medium banana. Add it to my food diary. And let's see what else. Maybe I had some soy milk. Maybe I had regular cow's milk. So I'm going to click soy milk, but I didn't have a full cup. So I'm going to say I had 0.5 of a full cup. I'm going to add that. What else did I have? Maybe I had some peanut butter. Gonna search for that. And obviously there's like endless options. If you really want to, this is totally up to you, but if you really want to get very specific with what you've chosen, you might actually go get your jar of peanut butter and compare, you know, is your peanut butter, does it have 100, 180, 190, 200 calories per 2 tablespoons? And if so, great, maybe just select that one. It doesn't have to be exact. I have a crunchy one and I definitely have about 2 tablespoons, right? If I had 4 tablespoons, I would say 2 servings of 2 tablespoons, right? I might have closer to 4. I'll just say 1. Okay, so apple, some cherries, oatmeal, banana, soy milk, peanut butter. Great. So there's my breakfast. I'm just going to input 1 meal just to show you generating the report. So when we come back here to the instructions, after you've entered your 5 days, so I'm only showing you that I've entered 1 meal. Obviously, enter all 5 days of foods and beverages. Actually, why don't we enter a beverage just for the heck of it. So coffee doesn't have a ton of calories, but yeah, let's just go. I have 1 cup and I do have black coffee, right? If you have creamer, you can select some of these options, right? Like a skinny coffee maybe has skim milk in it. Coffee with creamer sounds like 1 tablespoon of creamer is what they're suggesting. So you could either select some of these pre-programmed options, or what you could do is select the black coffee, add that to your diary. Also recognize that 1 cup is usually 8 ounces. So if you have 16 ounces, you're probably having 2 cups. If you're having 12, you're having 1.5 cups. And then you could go back in again and search for, you know, your creamer. And you can search, you can usually input a brand name here, or if you just have whole milk, you can search for whole milk, whatever you put in your coffee. If you have coffee, if you put anything in it. I don't put anything in mine, so I'm not going to add that. Okay, so then coming back to the instructions, right? Once you've entered 5 days, foods and beverages, I would encourage you to enter water for your own tracking purposes. I obviously didn't input water, and water is non-caloric and non-nutritive, except that it is water, and water is a nutrient. But there is a fun piece when you just come back out to your food diary. It will track your water down here. So quick add, right? By 10 o'clock in the morning, yeah, I've probably had 4 cups. Or you can custom add. So that's a nice thing too, is to track your water down here. When you finish logging all foods and exercise for this day, go ahead and click here, complete this entry. So you're likely not eating enough, right? Because this is only my breakfast. Okay, anyways, now for step 2, we're gonna print this report. So from the home page, click on the report tab and then click weekly digest. Okay, reports is up here. And then from reports, I can either, let's see if Weekly Digest is in here. Yeah, it's not in here. This you're going to use for part 2, but Weekly Digest is right up here. So click Weekly Digest. Oops, what happened? I must have clicked the wrong link or the wrong week. Oh yeah, so this is for September 6th through 12th, right? So I actually need the current week. Oh, do we have to do that all over again? Okay, so let's just go back. Sorry. Okay, so it's going to generate the report for week 6 through 12. So let's, fortunately, everything's already in here for my breakfast. So this is another reason why I strongly encourage you to get this done 2 weeks ahead of time so that when you go to generate your report, it's all in there. Okay, so now it's showing me, sorry, I have a little cat hair in my mouth. Now it's showing me September 6th through 12th, right? Here's Tuesday the 7th where I tracked my breakfast. Great, great, great. And here's where it's going to tell me my macronutrient goals compared to their totals. What I want you to be doing is comparing your totals to the AMDR and the RDA. So to print this, depending on your computer, you might actually have an option to print. But what I would encourage you to do, at least on PC, I don't know about how it works on Mac, but I think there's maybe like a little Apple button on your keyboard, an Apple key. But on like a Dell or like an HP computer, if you click on your keyboard Control and P, you should be able to print your full report. Yeah. Okay, and then you can either save it as a PDF, so probably save it as a PDF, right? And then you're going to click Save. Save it to like an important folder, like maybe your Corning Community College folder, maybe your Health 1510 folder, right? And then save it, title it whatever you want, like MyFitnessPal Weekly Digest might be good. MyFitnessPal Weekly Digest or Project Part 1, right? And then you click Save, and then it's there for you. Alrighty, so that is all of it for part 1. What I'm realizing actually right now as I'm making this recording is what you may want to do in order to actually compare your weekly macronutrient intake. I should actually change this to daily because we've been talking about daily intake. So compare your daily macronutrient intake to the recommendations. So what you would do here is you would want to look at carbohydrates, right? So carbohydrates consumed, this is in grams over here on the left. And you can see on 9/16, we had 93 grams of carbohydrate, right? We'd also want to be looking at fat. So fat consumed, again, 9/16 was the only day I entered. We had 20 grams of fat from all that peanut butter. And then protein, right? So protein, we had 16 grams of protein, again, on that one day. So if you have all 5 of your days tracked in this particular week, you can see, okay, here's my daily, here's, you know, day 1 through 5, here's my carbohydrate intake, here's my protein intake, here's my fat intake. You can take an average of that, and then you can compare that to the acceptable macronutrient distribution range and the recommended dietary allowance, the RDA. So in order to fully complete this part here, step 1, part 1 of step 3, you will also want to be, you don't need to print these reports because that gets to be a little tedious, but you're going to want to at least come in here to the charts and reports And I don't think you can select them all at once. Yeah. So what you'll have to do is look at each of them, look at carbs, take the average across your 5 days, write that down. Look at fat, take the average across 5 days, write that down. Look at protein, take the average over the 5 days and write that down. And then you can utilize that. I would encourage you to include those numbers in your actual written report. So like across 5 days, your average daily intake of protein was 46 grams, right? How does that compare to the acceptable macronutrient distribution range for you? You might recall, if you go all the way back into Unit 1, in order to really figure out the acceptable macronutrient distribution range related to you specifically, you will also need to calculate your EER. So this is where the project gets to be a little bit comprehensive, is because in order to do that, you'll want to come back into probably week 1, actually. I think chapter 2, but week 1, right? Here's a link to an estimated energy requirement calculator. So if you haven't done this yet for yourself, you'll want to do this for this part of the project. And then here's how you can use EER to determine what is the actual range of grams for carbohydrate that you need per day, what's the actual range of grams of protein that you need per day, what's the actual range of grams of fat that you need per day. So this part of the project is definitely asking you to compile and compute a lot of the information that we've learned so far in class, especially going back to Unit 1, and actually put it into practice. So if you have any questions whatsoever about what you're doing, please don't hesitate to email me, set up a time to meet with me. We can meet virtually in real time, and we can do the calculations together so that you actually, see and understand what it is I'm asking you to do, and so that you actually understand the calculations as well. Part 2 of the project, let's see. So here's your grading rubric for part 1, also how to submit part 1. When you come into part 2, you're going to record a new 5 days. And this time you're also recording physical activity, right? In these 5 days, though, this should also be highlighted. I want you to spend at least 1 week implementing your nutrition recommendations, the recommendations that you made in part 1. So again, if you feel like you're already pretty sound and healthy nutritionally, maybe you haven't actually changed anything, right? But if you feel like, okay, well, you weren't eating any fruit, maybe your protein intake was low or too high, and maybe your fat intake was way too high, right? Then 3 simple suggestions you could make would be to, eat at least 1 piece of fruit a day, to reduce your fat intake maybe by 10 grams a day, maybe even identify high-fat foods in your weekly diet and see if you can eliminate some of those. So anyway, those would be the types of recommendations. Then in part 2, I want you to actually implement those changes. This is for part 2. Implement those changes and record 5 days in which you're implementing those changes. Then for the reports part for part 2, same thing. You're going to go to the reports tab, and then I ask you to print the following 4 charts. So total calories, fiber, vitamin C, and exercise minutes. And then I ask you to do a similar analysis. So in order to find those charts, right, it's in reports charts, and it's the same tab we've been using, right? So I ask you for calories, fiber, vitamin C, and exercise minutes, right? So same thing, we didn't record any exercise here. We didn't record exercise in part 1. It's in part 2 that you record exercise. So same thing, you'll generate these 4 reports, do the same control print them, name them appropriately. If you want, might be worth also actually just printing. So like here, this is a 3-page report. this is the only page that matters. So here you can select, I only want page 2. It's only going to print me the page that matters. That would be great if you could do that. And then again, save it to your computer. And then in the written report for part 2, in the written summary for part 2, again, 5 simple steps to follow. So just make sure you include all 5 steps. Review the recommendations you made in part 1. Explain how they've affected your nutritional health. Describe how your macronutrient intake has changed or stayed the same. So again, this is something that I'm not asking you to generate the report specific to these, but you may want to go in, hint, hint, and actually look at roughly, okay, how is your fat intake over these second 5 days? How's your protein intake over these second 5 days? How's your carb intake over these second 5 days? And how does that compare to your first 5 days from 6 weeks ago? And then discuss these 4 reports that you just generated: total calorie intake, total fiber intake, total vitamin C. Oh, and then step 4 is comparing your exercise minutes. So again, you're probably watching this in the middle of Unit 2. We haven't really talked about vitamin C and physical activity just yet. But maybe by the time you're watching this, we have talked about total calorie intake, which is really EER, and we have talked about fiber intake. Sorry, I was just making sure, I just thought to me, am I recording? I do that every time. So it'll be in Unit 3 and even Unit 4 that we actually get to recommendations for vitamin C, and that we actually get to the national guidelines for physical activity. So again, that's why this part isn't due until week 12, because I'll want you to pull some information from, at that point, pulling information from Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4 to actually fully write out this analysis. And then step 5 is again to include at least 1 APA citations from 1 scientific resource. Ideally, it's not the same resource that you used in part 1. Alrighty, and then again, there's directions for submitting, really straightforward, but I just write it all out in as much detail as I can. Please remember to include all of the charts that you've printed. There should be 5 total charts here because you're also including the weekly digest. And then in part 1, it's really just your written summary and the 1 report, which is weekly digest. And again, there's a pretty thorough grading rubric for part 2. Each part of the project is out of 100 points, so pretty significant. This project weighs pretty significantly on your total grade. And part of that is because the major other grades we have are tests and labs. And I know probably half of us don't really like tests and don't really care for taking tests. And in my opinion, tests aren't always the best analysis of a person's understanding of the material. So this is another format for you to express your understanding and your knowledge of what we've talked about over the semester. Alrighty, so there is a little overview. That was definitely more than 10 minutes, but there's a little overview for your My Diet Analysis project. Again, when you're ready to submit everything, just come back into that MDA project folder. For part 1, click here, create a journal entry. You'll put your name or put what it is, and then attach your 2 files for part 1, and then post your entry down here. Same thing for part 2, except in part 2, you're going to be submitting a handful of things, right? Here's the written report, the weekly digest, and then the calorie, fiber, vitamin C, and exercise minutes. So same thing, create the entry, put your name, attach all 6 files, post it. Okay. These are also private. This is a private tab. I don't think it might not say it for you, but I'm the only one who can see what you post. So this is not a public discussion board. This is a private journal. So everything you post will be private and only seen by me. Alrighty, that's it. Again, definitely please email me, call, text if you have questions. If you just have questions and you want to communicate by email, we can do that. but also if you are so confused, just totally not getting it, that's fine. Let's set up a time to meet and actually talk about what it is that you're not understanding, right? And hopefully we can sort that out. Okie doke. Thanks for watching and have fun with the project. Hopefully you enjoy it. Okay, see you next time.